Hi, I'm Charles with AniCap. The story begins as a man is on the verge of death. He prepares for death as he thinks about how his life wasn't so great, but is shocked to find that he hasn't died just yet. Instead, he is surprised to find himself being lifted easily and quickly realizes that he has been reincarnated. He is now a 34-year-old man inside an infant's body and explains to us his new name is Rudius. Rudius is a very mischievous child, and we are introduced to the family's maid Lilia. Lilia believes that there is something wrong with his behavior, but takes it back as his mother explains that he is just a child and doesn't know any better. Rudius determines that he must be in Europe. He hates the idea of living in such a rural place and would just like to play on his computer again. After seeing his father's sword play, he takes a tumble and is then shocked to see his mother use magic. Rudius realizes that this isn't Europe. This isn't Earth at all, and it's actually a world of swords and sorcery. Fast forward to when Rudius is 2 years old, and he hopes that his mother might start teaching him magic. He discovers that his family only has 3 books in the entire house, and realizes that he will have to learn to read a new language. A year passes as he continues to read, but he explains that no one believes that a toddler will be able to understand what's in the books. Rudius learns that the only ways to cast magic are with an incantation or magic circle. Furthermore, the amount of mana someone has is fixed at birth, and he doubts that his genes are going to provide him with much. Rudius decides to give it a try, but is underwhelmed by his results. He tries again, but this time with more focus, but is only disappointed again. Shockingly though, he realizes that the spell began without the incantation, but faints as he has already depleted his mana. Rudius continued to practice and states that the books were all wrong. His mana grew the more he used it, and magic works without incantations. Rudius tries to figure things out for himself and determines that using magic at an early age must dramatically increase someone's magical power. He finally manages to make several water drops and determines that it's now time to figure out how to make them fly. Sometime later, Rudius accidentally hits his father with a water projectile, and after hiding in fear, begins to celebrate his achievement. He explains that all the spell requires is for him to create it, set its size, set its firing speed, and finally activate it. Rudius is more confident now that he has built up his magic power and tries out some intermediate magic. Shockingly, after just reading the incantation in his head, Rudius manages to launch an extremely powerful blast across the village. His parents find him amongst the destruction as his father wonders if a monster attacked. His mother, however, is extremely proud as she notices that Rudius must have read something from the book and determines that he must be a genius. She wants to get him a magic tutor since he is already doing intermediate magic, but his father reminds her that if they had a boy, then he would be a swordsman. They argue, but Lilia points out that Rudius can learn both. They decide to do just that and are shocked to find that the tutor they hired isn't an old retired adventurer. Instead, it's a young girl named Roxy. She sees that her student will be Rudius and mutters how oftentimes idiot parents think their kid has talent just because he's a bit of an early bloomer. She explains her doubt that Rudius is anything special, but his mother guarantees that Rudius won't disappoint. Roxy begins by explaining that there are only 3 types of magic: attack, healing, and summoning. Each is divided into 7 ranks: beginner, intermediate, advanced, saint, king, emperor, and god. She begins to give an example, and Rudius asks if it's necessary to use an incantation. Roxy explains that it's impossible without one, and Rudius realizes that he must just be special for not having to use incantations. Roxy's demonstration destroys a tree that Rudius explains is very important to his mother, so she rushes to heal it. Rudius then gives it a try and decides that he will say the incantation so she won't ask too many questions. However, his spell goes off without him finishing the incantation, and Rudius is forced to reveal that he doesn't use them at all. Roxy is at a complete loss for words at this information and decides that Rudius will be worth training after all. Just then, Roxy is scolded as the tree falls apart, and later Rudius uses all his knowledge from dating simulators to console her. Roxy is surprised to hear she is invited to dinner as Rudius's parents welcome her with open arms. As everyone celebrates, Rudius thinks about how his new life is like a dream, and his old one ended full of regret. He is more confident that he can actually make it in this world, and can now actually get serious about living. A quick flashback shows how Rudius's previous life was ended abruptly by Truck-kun. Back to the present, Rudius wakes up after losing consciousness from using too much mana, and explains that he was making figurines to practice earth magic. Afterwards, Rudius explains that Roxy is a great teacher as she makes lessons incredibly interesting. She would later reveal that she is actually a demon, and that's why his parents were surprised when they first met. Roxy explains that there is a race of demons called the Spurred. They are a green-haired race that is extremely terrifying. 400 years ago, they went on a killing spree during a war between humans and demons called the Laplace War. They even ended up betraying other demons and were kicked out of the demon continent for being too dangerous. She warns Rudius to never go near one and explains that they all have emerald green hair and red gems on their forehead. She explains that people become terrified when they mistake her hair color for green, but Rudius states that he likes her hair color. A year goes by as we see Rudius wields very powerful magic. He explains that all the training has paid off since he now never runs out of mana, and his lessons are as smooth as ever. However, his swordsmanship training isn't going so well, but he reminds himself that his body is still only 4 years old. Sometime later, Rudius watches some boys play and is reminded of how he was tormented at school in his previous life. Roxy meets with him and explains that there is a very prestigious magic school called Renoa that she recommends he attends. Rudius couldn't care less about school and explains that Roxy is the only master he needs. She doesn't want him to call her master anymore as he is already quickly surpassing her. He doesn't understand, but she explains that he will sooner or later, and we see that when she is alone, Roxy struggles with her magic. Afterwards, everyone celebrates Rudius' 5th birthday. His father gives him a sword and explains to Rudius that he will need to have the courage to defend his own wife and child one day. His mother gives him another book about magic and is elated to see how much he likes it. Roxy gives him a magical wand she made herself that is able to amplify mana. He humbly thanks his master, and Roxy points out that he was able to learn 4 types of advanced magic before turning 5 years old, and he has earned the right to be a little more conceited. Unfortunately, she explains that she has nothing left to teach him, and he will be having his graduation exam the next day. That night, Rudius explains that he can't ever think about leaving his house without having terrible memories from his other life. He was tormented relentlessly, and that fear follows him even now. Rudius knows that things are different now. He can leave the house just fine, but his body won't cooperate, and he just wants to cry. The next day, he is told that the exam must take place outside the village, but he is terrified. The time to leave finally comes as he is mortified, but Roxy assures him that everything will be fine. Outside, Rudius can't stand to be looked at, but soon realizes that everyone is just talking to Roxy. Roxy gets him to talk to her a bit, and Rudius explains that he doesn't feel so nervous anymore. Everyone around seems so nice, and Rudius realizes that things must have been difficult for Roxy at first since she is a demon. They arrive at their destination, and Roxy explains that Rudius needs to watch carefully. She will be using a saint level spell that she can only use once, and his exam will be to see if he can do it as well. Rudius wonders if they had to go all the way out there because it's a secret spell, but she explains it's so that they don't hurt anyone. Roxy begins her incantation as the weather begins to change, and she unleashes the immensely powerful spell. Their horse is injured by a lightning strike, so Roxy rushes to heal it, and asks that they keep it a secret. It's now Rudius' turn, and Roxy protects herself and their horse with a spell. Rudius excitedly begins the spell, but thinks the entire time about how this will probably be the last time he spends with Roxy. After his spell is done, Roxy jokes that she didn't tell him to make his bigger than her demonstration. She points out how bittersweet the moment is for her, as Rudius learned in 2 years everything it took her entire life to learn. However, she is still proud of him and congratulates him on becoming a saint level water mage. Later, Roxy prepares to leave and apologizes to Rudius for lacking the ability to guide him further. However, Rudius explains that this isn't true at all, and he gave her more than he could have ever asked for. Roxy gives him an amulet to commemorate his graduation, and Rudius promises to cherish it forever. Roxy then leaves for good, and Rudius thanks her one final time. He thinks about all the things she taught him, but points out how what he is most grateful for is for her bringing him outside. She managed to do what no one else did in over 20 years, and promises to always respect her. The next day, Rudius vows to not let his life go to waste any longer, and asks his parents if he can go outside. His parents are delighted to hear that he no longer fears the world, and his father reminds him to be kind to others, as a man's strength isn't for pushing people around. Rudius then ventures off to find several things he has never seen before. Just then, he encounters a group of boys bullying someone for being a demon. Rudius instantly steps forward to stop them, but isn't even looking in the right direction. The bullies can't understand where all the water is coming from and decide that it would be best to just run away. The boy being bullied thanks him for his help, but is startled when Rudius cleans him off a bit. Rudius is shocked to see the boy have green hair like Roxy warned him about, but relieved to see that he doesn't have a red gem on his forehead and isn't a spurred. Afterwards, the boy is surprised that Rudius isn't scared by his appearance, and explains that he doesn't know if he is a demon or not. His father, who is half-elf, and mother, who is human, told him he isn't a demon though. The boy begins to cry, however, as his hair isn't the same color as his parents. Rudius explains that his father told him to help those in need, and the boy wonders why Rudius is still keeping him around. Rudius points out that he would rather be friends with him than a bunch of bullies, and they introduce themselves. The boy's name is Sylph, and he asks Rudius to do the thing with the water he did before. Rudius explains that it's magic, and Sylph can do it too if he learns the incantations. Sylph is too shy to ask, but becomes excited when Rudius states that they will begin their lessons right away. That night, Rudius is scolded by his father for punching a boy. Rudius tries to explain what happened, but his father doesn't let him speak, and simply states that he should apologize. Rudius thinks to himself how he could just get things over with by apologizing, but determines that that won't be good for anyone. Instead, Rudius tells his father that he is just shouting without hearing any explanation, and it must be nice for an adult to have such power over a kid. This gets Rudius slapped, but Rudius just stands and calmly explains to his father that he has done everything he could to be a good child for his parents. He has worked hard to earn their trust, and it isn't okay for him to so easily just take someone else's word. Rudius states that he won't apologize, and is even proud of what he did. This shocks his father, and he finally wants to hear what actually happened. Rudius decides to guilt him now and tells his father not to worry. The next time he sees 3 kids ganging up to bully one helpless kid, he will just ignore it. In fact, he might even jump in to make it 4 against 1, so that everyone will know that that's the Grey Rat family way. Rudius guilts his father even further by stating that once he grows up, he won't use the Grey Rat family name, because he will be too ashamed to be from a family that ignores violence. Rudius thinks to himself how he spent his entire previous life weaseling his way out of unwinnable arguments. He is totally in the right this time, and his father has no chance of winning this one. His father then apologizes and listens to Rudius' side of the story. His father then talks to his mother and explains that he handled the situation so badly as he was trying to teach Rudius not to resort to violence. He was close to kicking Rudius out, but a certain Rudius would have left with no problem, and he realizes that's exactly what he did when he was younger. Some time passes and Rudius explains that the bullies keep coming after him and Sylph, but they just fight them off easily. Later, the two continue their training, and Rudius is amazed at how Sylph's mana has increased compared to 6 months ago. He is certain now that all the books are wrong about limited mana, and Sylph is amazed to see Rudius use wordless magic. Rudius explains that it might be hard for Sylph to learn it as a newcomer, but instructs him how to do it anyway. Sylph struggles, which makes Rudius feel a bit special since he didn't have anything going for him in his old life. However, Sylph shockingly manages to do it, and the two celebrate by running through a field. It begins to rain, so they head to Rudius' house where they prepare to take a bath. This is when Rudius makes the shocking discovery that his friend is actually a girl, and he is stunned. Rudius apologizes to his father for the mistake he made, and his father is certain that Rudius will learn a lot from his failure. Rudius learns that his friend's name is actually Sylphiette, and he heads downstairs to apologize to her. He blurts out that she has short hair, so he thought she was a boy this entire time. This of course only upsets her even more, and his father takes back everything he said as he begins to wonder if Rudius might be dumber than he thought. Sometime later, Rudius is discouraged as Sylphiette hasn't spoken to him, and his father gives him some advice. He explains that he needs to show his softer side and reveal all his bottled up feelings he has for her. He needs to tell her how worried he is that she has been avoiding him, and it's all up to her after that. Rudius is far more confident now, but shocked to see that Sylphiette has arrived. Sylphiette tries to talk to him about what happened, but wonders if he is okay as he seems to be hyperventilating. Rudius struggles to speak and blurts out that he was just thinking about how he hasn't seen her face around lately. It's a shame since he likes her hair so much, and strangely asks if she has considered growing it out more. She seems a bit put off by this, so Rudius just speaks honestly as he states that he is afraid she doesn't like him anymore. Sylphia holds his hand to explain that she doesn't hate him or anything, and she wants them to just go back to how they were before. Rudius thinks about how he has no right to be friends with such a nice person, but decides to not overthink anything and will simply cherish their friendship. Rudius' father is glad to see his son make up with his friend, but stops to question what exactly he just taught his 6-year-old son. Thanks for watching part 1, 3,000 likes and I'll make a part 2.